Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Monica Ortiz Uribe. Today, we're going to take a glimpse into college life. Now, the transition into college is hard enough for most students. Imagine what that transition must be like for members of the military, whose life experience differs greatly from your average teenager just out of high school. For that reason, colleges around the country are finding ways to better accommodate student veterans. And one of those colleges is right here at New Mexico State. The university has set apart housing specifically for student veterans. And their model is getting attention from colleges around the country. So here to talk about that new initiative, we have Stevie Hansen. She's the secretary for the Student Veterans Association, and Jacqueline Rivers, the associate director for residential life. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
So I guess let's get started with you, Stevie. How did this idea for veteran-specific housing get started?
Well, in general, we're not asking for, a specific preference or anything, but what we've realized is veterans tend to function better in an academic area when they're surrounded by other veterans. And with a specific housing area, that adds to the ease of a transition from a military life into academia.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the pretense of why we wanted a veteran area in housing.
So tell me, how is it different from just your traditional student coming out of high school, going into college, to a student veteran coming back from serving and coming into a university setting? Well, how are their experiences different?
Well, I have a personal experience. Everybody's experience is different, but my personal experience, when I came to the university, we were required to go through freshman orientation. So basically we showed up at Corbett Center and we were all there in the auditorium, and we were basically surrounded by 18, 19-year-olds fresh out of high school. An interesting thing that happened is I was actually asked to leave because they thought I was one of the parents. So I had to reiterate that no, I'm a student, just like these guys. But it was very different. Being surrounded by kids that are fresh out of high school. I'm of the older generation, but there are veterans that are coming out that are in their 20s. But their life experiences are vastly different from those just coming out of high school.
And can you explain what some of those differences are? I mean, when you go through the military, what is the sort of training and responsibility?
When you get into the military, everybody knows you go through basic training, and that pretty much, you're stripped of your identity to begin with, and you become part of a unit. So you learn teamwork, for one. You learn time management and discipline. So that right there sets you apart from an individual that's just coming out of high school.
Yeah, it's trying to learn that stuff as they're going along.
And as you continue on, you finish basic training, and then you go on to your secondary school, which is where you learn your military occupation. And the discipline is continued, and then from there you get stationed to your first duty station, where you're actually put to work, where you do your job.
Okay. Well, Jacqueline, let's turn to you. Was this something that was complicated to set up when the student veterans came to your office and said, "We think we need something a little different"?
I don't think so. We have the spaces available. It's finding a space that's suitable for them. Like Stevie has said, it's finding a place where they can be together. And so what we see on our end anyway is non-traditional aged students, regardless of veteran status, sometimes have a hard time living with our more traditional aged students. So it's finding a place that is apart from our traditional residence halls, dorms as a lot of people call them. So where do we have that space, and where do we have enough space that we can keep them together so that they're still in this community? So we were able to use a part of our family housing, which seemed to be the best fit for our student veterans, and take some of those houses and dedicate those solely to the student veterans, and we're hoping to get them filled up pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, can you describe this on-campus housing and
Sure.
how it's unique?
Sure. These are our family housing units, so they are meant to be, they're just one-story homes. They're 2-bedroom, 1 bath. They have a really nice big backyard. They've got their own front yard. They have a driveway, so it's very much of this home feeling. So that's what I think is really nice about them. They have, you know, their kitchen area, they've got their living room, they have their washer hookup. So it's really a nice space for them, as opposed to maybe sharing a dorm room with an 18-year-old maybe.
Yeah, no, I walked through those just a couple weeks ago, and it looks just like a neighborhood. You wouldn't be able to tell that you're on a college campus. But so. Tell us about, I mean, that's a very unique model among universities, right? You
Sure.
don't see that anymore. Why?
Do you mean the family housing?
Yeah, the kind of the neighborhood style housing that you've got.
A lot of it is cost or space, depending on the university. And so, you know, for us, we were lucky enough, we're a land grant institution, we've got plenty of land, so we were able to build these single family homes that have a front yard and a backyard and a driveway. A lot of other universities that offer student family housing may do it in what looks more like our Cole Village units, which are these 2-story kind of townhomes, because they're more space efficient. But we were lucky to have the land, we have the space available, and we are happy to offer that to our student veterans.
Great, great. So Stevie, where when you first came to NMSU, where did you live? And tell us
Actually,
about.
I did live in student housing when I first came here. Yeah, I
The
lived
student
on
housing we're
Ospina.
talking
I lived
about.
on Ospina Street.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, Ospina Street is very noisy.
Well, tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Ospina Street was very noisy because that's the main bus route. You know, and DACC is right across the street. So, you know, it wasn't very conducive to my study habits, but over on Stanley Street, it's a very quiet area. And it's nice. There's a lot of shade trees and everything. And there's a community garden over there too, which is really nice. So it does give more of a homey feeling.
And so I understand that these were built right around the World War II, which is why this model of housing was built, right? They just don't, universities just don't build these kind of models anymore. So
they were well built, and they're still there. So we're able to continue to use them. I mean, they're in really great shape. So.
Okay. And so who lives there? Who lives there now? If I take a walk down the block and knock on people's doors, what kind of students am I going to find?
Well, in family housing around the area, we will accept any kind of family. And so sometimes that is a domestic partnership, sometimes that's a married couple, it can be a single parent with children, it could be 2 siblings, cousins. We allow for a very large definition, very broad definition of family. But the section that we have cordoned off or, you know, designated for the Student Veterans Association right now is empty, and we are hoping to fill that up. Oh. So we have actually taken houses that we want to dedicate that whole block to the Student Veterans Association.
Okay, and so what is what's the availability like, or is there a wait list? You say you have.
Right now we have 2 houses that are absolutely ready to move in if someone walked in the office today, and we are working on getting some more up and running probably within the next week or so. So we are ready for people to come. They just need to go ahead and fill out their application and provide the documentation required, and they are set to go.
Okay, and what's the cost, and what kind of documentation do you require?
For the documentation, they need to show a veteran status identification card, and then they'll need to show that they are an NMSU or DACC student.
Okay.
As far as the cost, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Do you
Stevie,
know?
can you help us?
I think it was $630 a month.
Sounds about right.
Utilities are included.
It includes everything.
Yeah, which makes it really nice because a big issue of people that are still currently in the military and they have families, one of their main concerns, they start thinking, okay, I'd like to go back to college, but where am I going to put my family? Where are we going to live? You know, are we going to be able to afford rent? you know, how far are we going to be from the university? So this actually gets rid of that whole problem. It solves a huge problem because the housing, everything's within walking distance of the main campus. So.
And so, where do you live? Where do you live now? And are you going to be moving into these new housing?
Currently, I live far from the school. I live over off of the 70 right now, so I have to commute now. So that is a downside. I do miss the days when I was able to just walk to class.
So what made you make the decision to move far away?
Actually, it was space. I kind of needed more space. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that you'll stay there, or would you consider moving back to the university? Or?
I've actually thought about moving back to the university. Of course, because it was a space issue, I'm wrestling with that. You know, but I'll tell you, it is very nice living on campus. You know, and I think especially on Stanley Street, where it is a bit more quiet than on a major bus route, it would be very enjoyable. So.
Well, and do you have families that have already started to move in?
Not that I'm aware of yet. I think we've got some applications in, so we're working on getting them in. And something to point out too is it's not just for veterans and their family. So if there was a veteran, a single veteran who wanted housing, they would still be put in this community of veterans. So it could be 22-year-old straight out of the Army who doesn't have a family yet and is looking to move in. They would also be eligible for this group housing with the veterans housing.
Again, this is just to promote the proximity and
yes,
okay.
Absolutely. And the same thing, like Stevie was saying, that 22-year-old coming straight out of the Army is going to have a very different experience than our 18-year-olds or even our 22-year-olds who are living in an apartment. And so we want to give them that opportunity to be in community with other veterans. And so that's why we're making an exception to what is our traditional family housing requirements and allowing students who are veterans to live in this community. So a single veteran on their own could still have this home within this community, which I think is really neat. We're also making pet exceptions, so it's a good chance for people without a family, if they do meet the veteran qualification and want to live there, they can also have a pet.
Okay, and I understand you're sort of tweaking the pet requirement because regular the civilian families are allowed to have pets.
They are, right. So that's why I was saying it's more for those single students, because our single students that live in our residence halls or our apartment communities are not permitted to have pets. But if they are within this veterans housing, they will be permitted to have pets. Okay. They just have to follow our pet policy like we have in family housing.
All right, and Stevie, tell us about how it was for you coming back to school and how you made that decision and how you managed the transition.
I made the decision to come here mostly because of cost and lesser of a population. I actually came from San Diego, very dense population, very expensive, not very conducive to going back to school. But coming here, it's a much slower pace. And being a veteran, it's a lot easier to make that transition when you don't have daily stressors of, you know, being stuck in traffic for an hour and you've only gone 2 miles, you know, and the cost of living is very affordable. So those are 2 stressors less that give you the ability to really focus on what you need to focus on in school.
And so, was it? Tell me how you got along with your peers when you first got started. Was it difficult to interact and engage?
Sometimes there's some difficulty. You know, the younger kids are kind of surprised at how old I am, first of all, and then to find out I spent 10 years in the Army. You know, and of course they have all kinds of questions like, where did you go? What did you do? You know, but for the most part, they really have a hard time relating to my experiences, and I'm sure across the board that's how it is with every veteran that comes on board, whether they're my age or whether they're in their 20s. You know, when they start talking to their peers that are out of high school or out of a community college that don't have military experience, it is hard for those individuals to relate to us.
So now that you brought it up, why don't you tell us? Yeah, what did you do, and where did you go?
Well, I joined the Army. I was in for 10 years. I did 4 years active duty, and the rest I did in the National Guard. I did my basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and then I did my secondary school at Fort Gordon, Georgia. So my MOS, which is Military Occupation Specialty, I'm a 31 Charlie, which means I'm a radio operator, or was a radio operator, teletype. My first duty station was Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was there for about 2.5 years. And my first overseas duty station was Korea. And while I was in Korea, I cross-trained into satellite communications. And then coming back, I got out of active duty after my 4 years and joined the National Guard. And I was in the National Guard up in Seattle, Washington, and then ended up going back to San Diego, where I'm from.
So tell us, what exactly does a radio operator do?
Well, a radio operator in my day, because it's not the same as what it is now, you're basically in charge of relaying communications between upper command to lower command, secret messages, top secret messages, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you relay these messages?
Mostly via teletype. So it's kind of like a little computer with paper. My stuff was pretty old school.
And you do it in some sort of an office? Or?
No, I was in the back of a truck in a box. They called it a rat rig. So radio and teletype rig. So that's where the acronym came from.
And so you're saying that now it's done in a different way?
Yeah, everything's digitized. The equipment is much smaller and easier to carry. When I was doing my job, like I said, everything was in a box. The whole front end of the box was all communication equipment and backup power. And you know, you can go to a military museum and see all the equipment that I worked on.
And not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Okay, okay. So now you're back at school. What are you studying, and what are your plans?
My major is geography, so I'm studying GIS, which is basically digital cartography, map making, that sort of thing.
Okay. And what are you looking to in terms of a future career?
I haven't really decided. There's so many things that you can do with GIS, but lately I've been getting interested in environmental geography. So kind of being more in tune with recycling and preservation of natural habitats, things like that.
Okay, so. Okay. And so you were talking about that. This is one of many initiatives that the Student Veterans Association is working on, right? There's
yes.
this housing component. What else are you all working on?
We're working on many things, but our next main goal is to get a Veterans Resource Center. Currently now we have an office that is basically things veteran, but all they do is they're certifying officials. That's their job. So basically military people that get out and they become student veterans, if they're on their GI Bill or one of the other chapters, they go to this office specifically to get certified so that the GI Bill money comes into the university. So what we're focusing on for Veteran Resource Center is more of an all-encompassing center. They'll still have, that facility to get all their GI Bill paperwork done, but also to have a veteran lounge. If you're having a hard day and you just need to take yourself out of the equation, you have other veterans around you, and you don't have kids running around, like in Corbett Center, it gets pretty loud. Have a computer area for other veterans to use, and specifically a veteran mentor. And what I mean by a veteran mentor is someone who understands the world of acronyms from the military and how they can help translate that into academia for this incoming student veteran, and eventually into language for their resume so that they can get a career later on.
Okay, and so these mentors, they will have been in college a few years,
yes.
And showing the new arrivals.
Yeah.
Kind of orienting them around.
Yeah.
And speaking of orienting, you were also talking about maybe some kind of a special orientation for student veterans.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I first came here, I had to go through the freshman orientation, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah. What happened? What happened?
Well, I actually ended up getting candy thrown at me, so I really didn't appreciate that part. So, and this has happened to other veterans, and as we've gotten together and we've talked about it, a solution came up. Well, why don't we have a separate orientation specifically for veterans? Because there's a lot of information that we need to know like the certification. Where do you go? Where do you go to get things done? That's what it boils down to for a veteran. We don't care about where the parties are. You know, we really don't. We just want to know where to go to get everything, you know, in order, so we can continue on and get to business.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. And Jacqueline, have you all been working with other universities, or have other universities called in to your department to ask questions about how they can begin similar programs for veterans?
Sure. Like we've mentioned in a couple other previous interviews, we believe we are the first university to be offering this specific kind of housing to student veterans, with the option of allowing them with their families and things like that. So we have been getting quite a ton of phone calls and emails in saying, you know, this is great, we would love to do this too. How did you start it? What does it look like? How can we bring this onto our campus? And actually one of the national housing organizations has contacted our director, Julie Weber, to see if she might be willing to speak on the subject to all the different colleges and universities who have housing, who are looking at doing this kind of thing. So it's gotten quite a bit of attention. I think it'll bring a lot of good for our veterans nationwide.
And so what are other college campuses doing that maybe don't have the kind of housing that NMSU have?
Sure.
What alternatives are other universities offering?
It would all just kind of depend on their space. They might be able to give them groups of, you know, residence hall rooms. So thinking of like our Garcia Hall, they might be able to give them a hall together. Again, that would be really difficult if someone has family, and that really might not be an option for them. Or space, you know, as well. They might not be able to do that. So it just kind of depends on what the schools have, but mostly what they're doing is that, or trying to cluster them in apartments even. But usually that's with roommates or things like that. So it might be 3 or 4 veterans in an apartment. But different schools haven't been able to offer what we are doing as far as these standalone homes in a whole community just for our veterans.
Right. So where are veterans living now, Stevie?
They're scattered all over the place.
Yeah.
And currently there are veterans that do live in family housing. They're just not on this particular street because it's just been developed.
Right.
So, but word through the grapevine, I have heard of a couple people that are really considering moving over to the street once a few people move in and things start getting solidified, you know, as far as the community goes.
Sure. Okay.
So.
Where are the student veterans that are coming to NMSU? Where are they coming from?
Everywhere, but mostly Fort Bliss, White Sands, and Holloman. There are 3 major installations, and we have a lot of individuals that are also in the National Guard and the Reserves here in New Mexico, and they end up coming to NMSU as well.
Okay. And what sort of activities do you all have now on a regular basis that the student vets can join?
Yeah, as an organization, we've kind of been all business lately, but we're trying to loosen up a little bit, and we've recently started a bowling night since we have the bowling shirts already.
Right. So, I was going to ask.
Yeah, but we're trying to loosen things up a little bit, and you know, trying to get together on more of a social level. You know, not so much of a business level, although we are still very focused on the business aspect because there's so many things to accomplish. So,
yeah.
But we are a student organization, and our primary focus is to help those, you know, people coming from the military to transition from military life into academia life, and basically go on to a successful career. And we have a motto: it's never alone. And
say that again.
Never alone,
Nice.
Which runs very deep. You know, we consider other veterans as our family. They're our brothers and sisters. Yeah. So it's important that they know they're never alone.
And Jacqueline, have you seen any kind of a change as a result? Has your department noticed any kind of a change, having made this accommodation? What kind of a difference it's going to make? Can you foresee that?
What we hope to happen is that we'll get this block filled up, and then hopefully have more people that are wanting that, and then we'll have to look at kind of our space and how we can continue to grow that. But I think people are really excited about this. I would hope at least it sends a good message to our student veterans that we understand their needs and their concerns, and we want to do what we can to help accommodate accommodate them the way that they need to be housed and, you know, living in that community setting. So we have gotten quite a positive impact, but I think a lot of, like what Stevie said, is we have veterans that are already living with us, and so it's finding a way for them to transition into this new development, and then hopefully getting other veterans that out there who are not yet living on campus to go there. I think it also is a great recruiting tool for us to say to student veterans, come here, we've got housing for you. You can live in a house, you know, you can bring your family with you. You could have the house to yourself, but we have that housing available to you. You get to live in community with other veterans who understand what you're going through and how your experiences are so different.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, unless there's anything you all would like to add, Stevie, any final words
No.
Very good. Okay. Well, thank you both for coming. Again, we've got Stevie Hansen. She is the secretary for the Student Veterans Association, and Jacqueline Rivers of the associate director of residential life. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.